there's two of us and they only have one mic, we're going to try to just speak very loud. Can you hear us in the back over there by the tree? Okay, thanks.
I'll talk louder, don't worry.
I'm excited to come back and do a lecture at BYU. I was invited to do a BYU lecture once, and that was November of 2015. And it was good, but at the time of my life, I thought the company was going to be dead within a month. I thought it could be possible bankruptcy, and so I just wasn't in the right mindset to give a lecture. And obviously there's a good story, so I'll tell you more about what I was going through last time I gave a lecture. And all the lessons that we're going to talk about came I'm in a more happy state, and I have a lot more lessons. But about the format of this lecture, I asked my wife to come join us and see if Lil thought it was a good idea. Problem is she's co-founder of Marriott, but she's also at Mainframe, and she also helps with like other startups. So she's been really busy, and so I basically put these slides together, showed her, like asked her to quit work early. She saw the slides, and she's like, sounds good. So this is going to be more of a panel discussion. And we also want you guys to ask questions. Feel free to interrupt, ask for clarifications, because we want this to be like more beneficial for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to do questions at the end, but if there's something urgent on your mind that comes up, feel free to raise your hand. We're happy to answer anything.
Yeah. So our clever title, really cheesy and cringeworthy title, is A Couple at War, and that's our story in entrepreneurship. Not war at it with each other, even though that does happen. We do go after each other. But it's more that we are both in one startup, and we were going at war with like at odds with people not believing us as a couple in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of doubters that, oh, you guys can't both be in a startup too.
You can't work together, it doesn't work. There's trust issues with other co-founders. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reason why we named it that way. So they gave an introduction. I was a co-founder and the CEO of DevMountain.
Yep, and I was the financial controller and came in from the very beginning and was there through exit as well. And I actually stayed longer than any of the co-founders. There's 3 co-founders, and I stayed longer than all of them. So I was actually pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to start out by talking about my journey. So I grew up on a farm, and yes, I had chickens, but I actually grew up in Idaho on a potato farm. Like right behind my house was a huge field of potatoes. I grew up doing potato harvest. I honestly had no idea really what entrepreneurship really meant, and I guess that's funny because farmers are in a way entrepreneurs, but it definitely, I never had any recollection of like what a tech startup was, or no one really taught me what that was. And so I never grew up thinking that I would be in this industry and doing what I do. And so yeah, I grew up in this very, very small town of Idaho. I had 72 people in my graduating class, 80% Mormon, like very, very narrow driven path, I guess. And so when I was in high school, I was like, okay, I know that for sure I want to be an accountant. I don't know like why that came to me, but in high school I just knew that when I go to college, I am going to be an accountant. And so that's what I did. I went to BYU, Idaho. I got my degree in accounting, and I loved it. And yeah, so I loved it. And then afterwards we met, and my whole world kind of got like turned upside down, for lack of better words, I guess. But after I graduated from college, I moved on and was like, hey, this is the next step. I'm going to get my career job. And I got hired at Fidelity Investments. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Fidelity Investments, but I thought it was like, this is going to be great. It's my career path. I really loved personal finance. I'm going to get all this experience, and I'm just headed on my way of being able to have the career I want to have. And I'm not saying that that's not like a great career option, but what my experience was as working with a corporation is I basically went in, they did train me, I got my Series 7, I got my Series 63, which basically allows me to be a financial broker. But then I lived the life of corporate life where you go in, you put in your time, and you leave. And the work you do is just very monotonous, and it's not really making a difference for your company that you're working for. I guess you're just fulfilling a role. And at Fidelity Investments, how it works, if anyone's curious, I'm happy to answer questions about that. But how it works is you're trained, you get your licenses, and then you go on the phones. And basically, you answer the phones all day long, and you help people with their financial accounts. And when I met Colt, he told me, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, cool, whatever that means, you know, because, again, you know my back history of, like, not really knowing what that means. And I was like, I'm going to pursue my life in my career-driven life. And there was a time where I came home from Fidelity Investments, and after learning more of like being here at BYU with him once we were married and him pursuing other startup ventures, I realized the difference of what startup life is like versus corporate life. And when I came home one day, I said, I will support you in whatever you do because I don't ever want you to have to do the job that I'm doing for the rest of your life. And I hated it so much. It was literally soul-sucking to go in and put a headset on and have to just listen to people's problems all day. You had a 15-minute bathroom break. You had your strict, like, 1 hour of lunch. And you got 2 15-minute bathroom breaks. And, like, they tracked everything. You had metrics on your phone, how long you're on the phone. Like, you even got docked for, like, taking too long on your phone calls. Everything was tracked. And so it literally felt like you had no freedom. And anyway, so that changed my perspective as a wife and as a supporter of someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, because I realized if someone was to do this and go and live this like kind of corporate life structure, and just to say if he was going to do my job, I think that would be a super really depressing life. And I didn't want him to live that life. And so yeah, that's kind of what introduced me into entrepreneurship and being a very supportive wife in this crazy journey that entrepreneurship is.
A couple side notes on her story really fast. I know why she picked accounting. She told me like a few months ago. She said when she was in high school, she like looked at the type of jobs that paid the most that wasn't a doctor. And that's the reason why she picked accounting. Money was a big driver force for her. And one of the reasons why is because her dad was a part-time banker and a part-time potato farmer, and then also a full-time potato farmer. And my great uncles, it's a small town, caused financial difficulties and almost bankrupt her family. And so she went through like financial difficulties. So she knew that she wanted financial security in her life. And here I am coming to say, hey, I'm going to bring a life of possible financial insecurity and a lot of ups and downs. And so at first, I think she was just like, cool, we'll see how it is. It might be like, let's get married, and if this doesn't work, you'll do a corporate job. But after that Fidelity training, I'm so glad she went through her hell, so that like she was like a coach for me. But as we see that I kind of brought her in
and this changed my life too. And that's why we talked about earlier that I co-founded this organization called Brave, which is a organization to help women entrepreneurs, and we do workshops and we do networking events, because entrepreneurship would never have been in my path without my husband, and I don't think I would have come across it without him. And I want other women to be able to have the opportunity to know entrepreneurship is a path for you, and there's great opportunities there, and just to have that on their radar. And that's why it's so important, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to step back.
And I think statistically, you have a better chance as an entrepreneur than like a MLM consultant. That's my opinion.
Yes. Echo that 100 times.
All right, so when I was in high school, I was from Kimberly, Idaho, did farm and dairy work and other stuff as well. So I was just fascinated about anything that was completely different than me. So what's completely different than me? China, right? Like everything's different. Their food, their language. It's not even a Roman language-based language. And so I was just studying China all the time in high school because it was completely different than what I was experiencing. So when I applied to BYU, I applied with a chosen major, which is pretty different than what a lot of people do. I chose international relations. Came to BYU, and I already had my life path like set going forward. I was going to do my PhD, so anywhere from like 7 to, I don't know, 8 years of school. I was going to go work for the State Department for a while, and then in my 40s or 50s, then I'll get my consulting company and maybe do like international business consultant. That was my predetermined path that I was going to take. To do that, I was a class robot. I wanted to get it done early. So I was taking tons of classes, heavy credit load. The first time I dated my wife,
The first time. There's a couple times.
I was doing an all-nighter every Wednesday night, right? So I did have that work ethic. I wouldn't go to bed. Every Wednesday night, I wouldn't go to bed until about Thursday after class work.
I think he's taking like 17 to 20 credits, and he was in all honors classes. And yeah, you just had this like crazy schedule, and every Thursday you were taking a Chinese language class, and every Thursday you had like this particular quiz, and so you'd like stay up all night like making sure you knew the language.
I'm pretty I have an auditory processing impediment, so like my brain just processes other people's speech a little different. So I have to like read your lips when you talk to me and everything, and it caused me a lot of trouble like in school back in Idaho. So I decided I was going to take Chinese, which was like the worst because they're like tones, right? Where mom means different things, different tones. I could not do it. And that took my straight A average away. It was all my Chinese classes. I was getting like C's. I was just trying to get through it. Anyway, back to the thing is, when I was a class robot, I was getting sleep. I was dating Cassie. She broke up with me because every time I would go hang out with her, all I just wanted was sleep. She said, I feel like I'm dating a 40-year-old. I don't want to do this anymore. So then we broke up.
It was like every weekend. Well, we also lived separately, right? He lived in Provo. I lived in Rexburg because I was going to BYU, Idaho. So when we were dating, we'd switch weekends, and either I'd come here or he'd go there. And yeah, like by the time he got there, he's like wanting to take a nap, and I was like, I'm a 21-year-old girl, like let's go have fun. And he's like, I need to take a nap, and I was like, this isn't working.
So after she broke up with me, and then as well as some different life events, I decided like, is this the career I really want to do? I was so determined to do this career that I decided to start playing with majors. I don't regret that about my education. It was like a fighter game, right? Where you choose one of your fighters, you get used to him, and you're like, no, I really don't like this guy. I'm going to switch over. And then you learn his combos, and you get better, and you kind of get what you want to be really good. I was like that in college. I started taking MBA credits as an undergrad. They don't do anything for your major. They just clog up your attendance record. But I don't regret that stuff. So I was just playing around. I was also a janitor at the time. Before that. And one of the classes I just was playing around was personal finance. I don't know if Scott Marsh is still here on the staff. The number one thing I learned from him in his class, he said, find someone that is leading in an industry that you want to be in, and then tell them that you're going to be paying your way to work for them. So find like the top guy, or whatever you want to do, and go and get that guy to be your mentor. Or a girl, sorry, or a woman. So I had a lot of mentors here, and I could go through and take the whole time about everyone that helped me in at BYU, especially Dr. Little. But I'm going to talk about what actually really tripped me into entrepreneurship, and we'll do it really fast because I think we have some other lessons we want to get to before the class is over. All right, so I was a janitor in the Clyde building, and I was doing janitorial work, and I would listen to podcasts all the time. And I was listening to Dave Ramsey podcast, and I was just thinking, I want to be financially independent as well. But then also I want to help other people. So I started coming up with like business ideas that I want to do. I was thinking, hours on end while I was a janitor by myself. And one of the business ideas I would share with family and friends, which was my first mistake, was just family and friends. And they thought it was one of the most brilliant ideas, right? So I was coming back from my janitor job. I was going across Brigham Square, and I saw a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, and Audi R8, and then a sign that says new entrepreneurship class. And I was more interested in the entrepreneurship class poster than like the whole flashy show of the exotic cars. And then it was this guy, John Richards, standing right by it. He was a BYU professor at the time. So I go and say, hey, I have the most brilliant business idea. Can I come talk to you? He's like, good. Well, how about you send me an email? So I wrote it out, sent it, and then he sent me an email back. In very kind words, but basically saying it was the worst idea ever. And here's the reason why. And that just drew me to John Richards because it was like, this is the first guy that was telling me that my idea was really crappy. And he told me why. And so that's how I got into it. I took his introduction to class. It introduced me to him, Dr. Little, Scott Peterson, and just like all the possibility of entrepreneurship. Also introduced me to what they just announced, the business model competition. I became a volunteer for that and slaved away at that. And I think that's where I first started kind of winning the respect of the people like Jeff Brown, and that was just because I was working so hard at that competition to help. But I learned so much because I got to sit in the back rooms while the judges were talking about all the businesses. And I just loved it. I just ate it up. So I started to, so back to that quote about mentors, right? The number one reason why I'm bringing him up is I worked, up to like 3 a.m. sometimes. And John Richards, if you ever know him. By the raise of hand, who knows John Richards? Not a lot of people. Okay, he's notorious for like working weird hours. Is that true?
True.
And his wife, too.
Both, yeah.
Both. So I would be like exchanging calls and everything at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever,
You
And,
became his TA. I don't think you mentioned that.
well, even that business model competition, because they were working on that. Then later I became his TA, and that's what I did. So I would just work my tail off. And to the point where John Richards said, this is the hardest working TA I've ever had, as well as like he helped with the business model competition. And the reason why the hard work paid off for a mentor, and I advise you guys find mentors and kind of slave away if the mentor reciprocates his appreciation to you, is because this is what I got. I got valuable lessons on a startup from a guy who's done startups himself, invested in tons of startups, got his trust, which is, I'll tell you one reason where it saved our tail later on when I had his trust. Expand my network. I would go to these events outside campus, which is really important for you guys to do. Go do meetups outside campus, and I'd be sitting over here and talking to people and get to know people over here. John Richards is over here, and he would actually like grab my shoulder, bring him in, and just introduce me, like, John Warnock, this is Colt Henrie, you got to know him. He's really fast learner, blah, blah, and give me introductions. It gave me so many opportunities. The fact that he was willing to grab my shoulder and bring me in and introduce me. And then also, unique for me, I became business partners with his son. And then he's also a lifetime friend, and his wife too. So we go to dinner together, and he's been really good to us. I had a bunch of ideas of my own, so they were all software based. Since this is tech lecture series, I didn't know how to code, so I'd go, this is a good idea. I'd pitch to a bunch of developers, and then I realized it's hard to get a developer because they could go get a job somewhere else and make a lot more money, even while they're in college. And that's when I learned the truth that developers are like the pretty girls at the dance, right? I like the quote on there, but I can't help it that I'm popular. That's what developers are. So I was like, I need to learn how to code. So I tried learning here at BYU, not Tenessa or not BYU, but I was learning how to crunch out how many slices of pizza on like a line prompt, and I was just thinking, I think the way I'm learning right now, Windows 95 came out like last year, and I'm still kind of doing other stuff. So I tried doing online and everything, but then I decided I'm just going to work for an accelerator called Boom Startup and maybe learn from the people in there on how they learn. And that's how I got introduced to my partner, Kaylin Sharp, and then Tyler Richards, John Richards' son. I was working for a Boom Startup in the incubator. And Kaylin Sharp had a master's in instructional psychology and was a developer in Silicon Valley. And he's like, hey, I have this idea that we're going to teach people in 13 weeks on how to code. And so I was invited on to come as operations, And then I also took the first DevMountain just because I was part of the team. So that's an important part. We'll kind of talk about some of the lessons later on. DevMountain was a really wild ride to go on. We expanded up to web, iOS, UI, UX. We've located into 4 different cities. And we've had thousands of graduates. I had to put that random thousand there because I don't know what it is now. Also, we control 3 brands now. After being acquired, we have DevMountain, Hackbright, which is an all-women's code boot camp in San Francisco, and New York Coding Design. And it was fun changing people's lives. One of my favorite stories, and I'm still friends with these guys, with Eric and Dennis. They're the founders of Podium. This cool story about them is they went and took DevMountain while they had the business idea. They created a minimal viable product. By raise of hands, who knows what a minimal viable product is? I think everyone here, right?
Well,
Okay.
not necessarily.
Well, I thought maybe he talked about it. Go ahead and say what a minimal viable product is.
It's just, well, it kind of explains itself, but basically you just create the very like bones of what your product is going to be, and yeah, it's just your very minimal, just get to market product.
Yeah, so with the code they learned, they created a minimum viable product. They went and pitched it to Peak Capital, and they got $500,000 of investment funds. Then they hired a CTO, scrapped all the code away, which is okay because they got someone way better at it. And now they're up there in Lehigh, and I have a few relatives that work there now, but it's hard to track like how big they are now. I think they're close to 300 employees.
Close to 300, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, any questions about DevMountain before we go on to more of the lessons and the meaty stuff that we wanted to get to? There's a hand right there. Did you have? Oh, go ahead. In the white shirt with the red dots with the maroon pants.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So DevMountain wasn't the first coding boot camp. So
No.
how did you differentiate yourself from the others, or is it more there's a vacuum in the local area?
The 2 easy answers for that: we were the first in Utah, right? And another thing is we started out with part-time. That was our niche, but it's no longer our bread and butter. We like pivoted, but us being part-time allowed us to just get an introduction to the marketplace.
And then another way we like differentiated ourselves from other competitors throughout the nation is the majority of people that came to DevMountain are actually from outside of Utah. So more than 50% were outside of Utah. And the way we differentiated is we always wanted to be affordable, and we provided free housing. So we tried to provide like the same level of education as our competitors, but only charging, and when we first started it was only $7,900. I think now it's $11,900. But compared to Hack Reactor or some other school in San Francisco or New York, they're charging up to $20K plus. And online, I think the online ones now that it's like pay after you complete your schooling, like once you get a job you pay, I think they're charging like $40,000. And so we always try to be like as affordable as possible and be very accessible, and the way we did that was through free housing. And that's what differentiated us from places in Utah and even nationwide.
Yeah, I think what kind of made us, so to put in 2 steps on what she said, to get started in Utah, we were the first in Utah, and then had some success and built relations with companies here in Utah and got their trust. And so therefore we're just kind of propelling here in Utah. But if we did just Utah, I would have stayed still. So I came up with the idea that caused me a lot of headache later on, but was totally worth it, was like, let's get housed and invite people under. And suddenly we shut up. And we've kind of found out, well, one, Utah is known as like a JavaScript area. And other boot camps had like Ruby or Python, and we chose JavaScript because that's kind of what Utah needed. And it was also grown pretty wide outside of Utah. And Utah was known, like we had an Angular conference here in Utah before like anywhere else. It was called NG-Conf, and it was selling out all the time. So people kind of knew that we were good for technology here. And then like, for instance, our cost per square foot here in Provo was like $12 per square foot for our like campus, while the people in like San Francisco, they were paying like $64 or more per square foot, right? And so like we could provide the same education, so people were like, I'm just going to move to Utah.
Yeah,
And
just fly in. I get
we've had
it.
people say, oh, Provo is such a bore. But people actually liked it because they're like, I came here just to learn code, nothing else, right? So that actually really helped us. So it was all kind of accidental stuff. So, good question though. Did I answer your question? Okay. All right, so now we're going to kind of move away from what DevMountain is, but more towards entrepreneurship. And it's crazy, when I got a lot of the mentors, and when you've got a lot of mentors, we get a lot of contradicting advice. And so some of the startups, the advice that are contradiction from each other, but they could both be true, is like, stay the course, be very diligent there. Then you also learn fail fast and pivot fast. Be data driven. But then also kind of like what Henry Ford said, right? Like if I took the data what the people wanted, they would still be horse and buggy, right? So it's kind of like trust your gut and go against the data sometimes. Treat this like a temporary project, because that's what startups are, and see where it goes. But then also don't make mistakes, because you could get bad reviews, you could get revenue hurt and everything like that. So that's the reason why what me and Cassie are more excited is it's more of our war stories as husband and wife. This is all new stuff from the last time I gave a lecture. Yeah?
We gotta buzz through these.
Okay. All right, do you want to start with fighting?
No, you can. I'll let you start with your story.
Okay. I fighting for places in the company. I was a young student. Kaylin brought me on and gave me a lot of trust, gave me some equity. I ended up doing pretty well. That I got a bigger chunk of equity that I was originally promised. It made like the biggest difference later on. However, we decided that we need to bring expert talent from like a competitor in. So we brought other people in that were supposed to be like the big hot shots. And we brought one individual in that kind of had almost the same talents as me. And for a while, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know, he started spreading rumors and lies about me. And it was kind of, once it did reach to me, I found out and got confirmation from my co-founders and everything that, yeah, he wanted to take over my equity. And he thought I was like a horrible co-founder, and he was always just back, talking about other people and gossiping about me to the whole company. And obviously I wanted him out of there. I wanted him fired. But my co-founder was like, no, we need to keep him for his expertise. He has all these amazing ideas, which we later found out was just like big talk. And so for almost a year, I was coming to work knowing that this guy wanted my equity, and it was almost like a rat race. And there was times I didn't want to come into my own startup just because I knew that this guy was after me. And it's just crazy because just the other while ago, we went to a place and this one guy said, oh yeah, I knew DevMountain. I came in and this one guy was telling me that the people who run it's really crap, meaning not just me, but my co-founders. And here's the ideas he had. And it was crazy. It was all the ideas that he thought was brilliant was my ideas. So he was taking my ideas, taking credit for it. He was telling everybody in the community that I worked for him, even though he worked for me. And it was just like kind of a hell thing. So sometimes that will happen. Some people will come in and they'll see you as like a target of somebody to get equity. And, obviously I decided to take almost the high road. I decided not to gossip about him. I would even try to collaborate with him. And, but the biggest thing is I made sure that I delivered all my promises. I under-promise, over-delivered. And at the end of the time of it, he ended up for stealing kind of funds and other stuff, he ended up being fired. He was bad for the culture. All the employees were having a hard time working with him. But at first it didn't feel like that. I felt like the world was against me. And he eventually got fired from the company. Company was fun again. but that was kind of like fighting for your position. You may have opportunities like that.
Yeah, I think the important lesson from that is staying true to like who you know you are and the value you bring to a company. And over time, people's true colors show. Like obviously he was someone that was being deceitful and gossiping, and over time, those colors really do come out and people see what you truly represent. And yeah.
Yeah, so when I started hiring people afterwards, I made sure that they knew gossiping wasn't like allowed in the company, because I know what it feels like as a team member coming in and knowing that someone's gossiping about you. It happens at a lot of companies, and it definitely makes the work more feel like hell. If I didn't have the equity and if I didn't have the upside, I think I would have went to somewhere else and used my talents there.
Yeah, and the thing about with, like he says, my equity, he was trying to get my equity. When you do a startup, usually you have like a 4-year vesting schedule. So technically, Colt, DevMountain sold before even that 4 years was up. And so Colt had, a 1-year cliff, and then you vest after that, monthly. And so if, per se, the person really did kick Colt out of the company, there is equity available. And I just want to clarify that, because I think sometimes that's confusing. You're like, you're the owner of the company, he can't just take your equity. But there is a possibility of that when there's vesting schedules.
Yeah, you always want to have a vesting schedule when you start up a company.
Yeah, and it's super important to have that in place.
I think we've helped up startups where they have had no vesting schedule. They'll just say, hey, let's start this company together. Let's split it 50-50. And then they'll go, and then, one person says, well, honey, we're not making any money. I'm going to go take this job and ditch the startup.
Yeah.
And then they leave, but they still have all 50%. Well, that kills the company. That's like one of the number of reasons why they can't get investment and other stuff. And so found it's a messed up equity cap table is like what investors usually say. And so the vesting schedule is really wise, which is you got to be here for a year to get 25% of whatever you were promised. And then after that, you get monthly, and that makes it so that you're committed to stay there for at least 4 years. And that was even on my co-founder, Kalen. It was his brainchild, and it was more for the health of the company. If Kalen would have left earlier, his shares would have been given back to the company.
They go back to the company. And it's a way to protect yourself as a founder, because what happens if the guy or girl next to you that you partnered with ends up being like the worst person in the world? And it protects you to be able to say, all right, you're out of here, and your equity comes back to the company. So yeah, it's a really good thing to have in place.
Yeah. Another lesson is, I already said, let your work do talking. Also, when we fired this guy, we thought, I don't know, obviously I think we learned from him. We believed him too much. We didn't check our references when we hired him. And then we checked his references after we fired him and realized everything was made up. So check your references, do your due diligence when you hire people.
Yeah, I wanted to do my lesson of like kind of keeping your ground and standing up for what you think is, for me personally, we got a lot of flack for me being in the company with my husband. And there's outside investors, outside advisors are saying like, this is the worst idea. And for us, we can see that. I can see why it can be a really bad idea for someone's wife, a wife of a co-founder, to be in the company. But I really stuck my ground and was like, no, I'm doing a really good job here, and I actually report to Kaylin. I don't report to Colt. Like, there could always be, I guess, suspicions of insider trading or whatever. But I really stuck my ground of saying, like, I bring a lot of value to this company, and I'm staying, and I'm not going to just be kicked out because I'm just the wife of a founder. And so, yeah, that was kind of like my experience of like having to stick up for yourself.
The big thing for her was that she showed her worth through her work to my co-founder, Kaylin. And Kaylin, when we had advisors come in and say, like, she needs to go, Kaylin's like, no, I actually want her personally because she does such a good job. But we listened to our advisors, and that's kind of where our next story is coming from. We listened to our advisors, so we replaced Cassie temporarily with the CFO. That CFO didn't work out. We got another CFO for hire. Then suddenly Cassie, Kaylin's like, look over the CFO's books. And so Cassie was sitting in a room, and I remember coming in, and I just saw they were stressed in this room. And then later, when Cassie comes out and said, I was like, hey, said the CFO's name. I'm just going to call him Tom. Tom's not his name. Hey, Tom, we're going to run out of money in a month. So we're
I
like,
think it was like a 3 month. It was 3 months.
it was October, or we're going to run money out of December.
By the end of the year, so he didn't really replace my job, but what he did is I was doing anything financial I was doing. So that includes like HR, the books, projections, everything. So the CFO came in and was doing like the projection side of things. And I was kind of like letting him do his job of, you manage cash flow, you let us know if there's like problems or whatever. And so I was like looking through everything in October, and I kind of let him run this through the summer and start of the fall. And I was like, we are literally going to run out of cash flow by December if we don't change things like dramatically. And he's like, oh, really? Like, I didn't really see it coming. And I was like, yeah, this is a problem, a major problem, like our biggest problem that I think we faced.
Yeah, so we're like, she was like, we need $75,000 to get through to December. And that's when, like, we got Cassie, we got one of our advisors, and me. We worked. We didn't go home for Thanksgiving. Cassie got sick for Thanksgiving meal. And we worked on Thanksgiving here in Utah while our family was up in Idaho. And we were crying every night. Like, when I'm crying at 2 a.m. and I roll over and I see that Cassie's crying at 2 a.m. and we feel like we're going to go bankrupt, we're going to lose everything, that's when we really know what the bad side of being an entrepreneur founder. While my two co-founders...
Yeah, with your spouse.
Yeah, with my spouse. While my two co-founders, one of them didn't even tell his wife. I won't tell you which one, but he didn't even tell his wife. So she would cook him meals, and he'd come home, and he'd have a break from all the stress. And for me, I had no break. We were just crying all the time. Anyway, so
It was crazy.
We worked through Christmas and everything, and first we're like, we need $75,000. No, we need $475,000, right? And then I started applying to every bank and everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like the perfect storm. We had expanded to Texas. I think ultimately looking back, we made the decision of expanding too quickly. Then also a cash shortage. December, we don't have any classes, but we still have all these people on payroll. So December is a really low cash flow month for us. So it's just kind of this perfect storm happened. And we had to reach out to everyone we knew, and was basically created this, at the time it was called an ABLE loan. And it was investors can put in money, and then they get a really good interest rate back. So we had very prominent angel investors in this area. We begged them for money, and they gave us money, and the loan hit at 9 a.m. and I had to, I didn't have enough money in January that year because we had made it through December, and I had to run payroll in January. And the money hit that morning from that loan, and I ran payroll, to be able to do it. And the employees... It was within an hour. Yeah, the employees never knew, all the troubles that we were going through, and how, if the loan wouldn't have been coming through, we would have had to tell everyone, hey, we're going to have to, kind of like the government. We're shutting things down, and then when we get money, or if and when we get money, we'll reimburse you for your work that you did in January. But luckily, we didn't have to do those things. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
we have,
No, I understand. And so the lessons learned from that was the sinking ship. Well, wine, it was hell. That's grape juice in the cup, not wine, for us. So here's the lessons. Know your financials, right? Start from the beginning to know your financials. There's a great book. I'll skip that. Question how your financials were put together. If you hire somebody, try to be able to understand where his data is coming from, or her data, and try to put together. That's what Cassie did, and that's what ultimately saved us. It was her questioning that. Build trust with your network. So kind of the story was, we were asking for loans all the time. My credit score was going down. Wells Fargo approved me for $15,000, and that was the biggest loan. I need $475,000. So I knew that wasn't work. So we found Able Lending, and we needed to find 3 investors that will back us and they'll support the other 75%. When we just put the question out there to our network, of close advisors, we were overprescribed in a day. So we were kind of being frantic for months when we could have asked our network. But we got the trust with that network before we were in desperate needs. And you guys should go out there and go out and build network and build trust with people now. Be a good actor for employees. I was the worst out of this, all the co-founders. I became known as the stress co-founder during this time. And the reason why is because since it was my duty and Cassie's duty to go find the loan, while the other two ran it, I had stress on my face all the time, and it made me a little bit unpleasant. And then people started, is there something wrong, right? And I realized, like, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you got to be a good actor. You have to be able to, not like this, but have you guys seen the Fire Festival documentary? And like they have Ja Rule. Ja Rule's like, guys, we got so much smart people here, right? You kind of have to do that, except don't do what they did on the Fire Festival. Also, yeah, well, they have questions afterwards.
Oh, it's after.
Okay, so right after we fire somebody, right after we went through that loan thing, we were approached by a company. We got acquired by Capella. Obviously, at the end, that was my silver lining. That was my light at the end of the tunnel. And we'll just get quick into the lessons. One, the biggest lesson I know, have 2 or 3 sharks always swimming around you, meaning have people that want to bite onto you, but if you only have one shark, that shark will swim around, take its time, take a little nibbles, whatever. But if you have 2 other sharks and they see it, they want to bite fast and they want to bite hard, right? So we had somebody approach us, we had another person approach us, and then we had like a third offer all at the same time, and it jacked up our valuation. We got acquired.
Created like a bidding war between these companies, and they'd be like, well, we really want you, and we'd be like, well, there's this other offer on the table. It's like you kind of have to play the game of, well, we have this other offer, even though, honestly, the other offer was like 3 times less than what they were saying. We just said, we have this other option. And they're like, okay, we'll give you more. Like, it's like he's saying, like the sharks. It's like you have to play this game of, like, you're not desperate, even though inside we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. But we're like, really calm about it and saying, there's other offers on the table, like, is that the best you can do, basically?
Yeah,
and
it made the biggest difference for our personal lives ever. So,
yeah.
Also, file your 83B within the first 30 days of starting your company. We learned that the hard way. We did not.
This is a tax form that you have to file. You do an LLC, I don't know if it's just for LLC.
I think it's just LLC.
You have to file a form that's called an 83B form, and it has to be done within 30 days. Basically what that does is make your stock as an owner of the company have a current valuation of 0. Like you report to the IRS.
Or $1 or something low.
I think it's like something very low. So when you sell a company, that means that you get to sell everything at a capital gains, which is a very dramatic tax difference than if you were just taxed at normal income tax rates. And so we did not do this. This was something that our legal advice didn't advise us on, and we didn't sign the 83B, and it caused a lot of mess, meaning that we sell this company, for Colt and I personally, we have to pay a 37% tax on everything that we bought. Or everything that we got from the sale. And instead of 15%. I think it's 17% now. So that's a huge difference in taxes, right? When you're talking about multi-million dollars. So we had to actually create another company. The company that bought us was actually really great to work with. They let us create another company. We sold that company, which therefore was like a parent company to DevMountain, and we got around it. But it was a pain in the butt, and it's just a stupid little form that we could have done, and it cost us hundreds of thousands in legal fees because we had to do this workaround for the 83B. So just sign the 83B.
When you file that? Is it
Within the-
confusing?
No,
within the first 30 days
of filing for the LLC with the state.
Yeah. Okay, also quick, your team is the biggest selling point. That was for us. Be honest in building your company. Due diligence is very due diligent when they have top lawyers going after you. And the deal's not official until, we went through 3 months of negotiation, and we didn't feel like it necessarily would go through until the money hit our account. And so I know there was another company here in Utah. This guy was going to get $10 million, leveraged his house, bought a boat and everything. The deal didn't go through and suddenly he's belly up. So just anyway, there you go. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it for having us here.
Thank you.